Hello there, pretty people of the internet, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Annika, and today I want to share with you my keys and tips for success in law school. I graduated law school here in Oregon back in May, and as of last week, I officially got selected by my law school for induction into the Order of the Coif, which is really exciting. Order of the Coif sounds super weird, but it's really just an honor society for law students, meaning that I graduated top 10% from my law school. Over the past 3 years, I worked really hard while being a student, being a mom, being on journal, working up to 30 hours a week at some point in order to do well as a law student. So grab yourself something to drink. I got my matcha latte right here, and get ready because I'm going to share my top tips for nailing law school. My first and probably most important tip is to never, ever miss class. Things come up, you get sick, you have job interviews, things happen, but make sure that you never miss the material from a class. That means still do the reading for the class even if you know you're not going to be there. Ask your friend or a few friends for notes from that class. Go to office hours after the class and ask the professor if you understand the material correctly. Come with a few specific questions. If there are hypos in the reading that you think were solved during class, try to work through those with your professor. It's important that you get that information as soon as possible because even small gaps in your knowledge in law school can cause severe consequences down the road. That leads into my next tip, which is to make sure to always do your reading. Always do your reading and do it before class. I know in undergrad and especially in grad school, the reading and what we talked about in class were often not the same, but in law school they are. The thing is, you need to read the assigned reading to understand what's going on in lecture. They will talk about very specific stuff that you can't really skim your way to through the book in class to find. You have to know approximately where it is, and you can only know that if you've done the reading. Even if you don't understand the reading, make sure to finish it. Even if you have to scramble to finish right before class, finish it. It's so important. I also recommend that you do the reading first before you look anywhere else. Even if the topic is overwhelming and confusing, make sure that you do the actual reading fully and completely before you look to other outlines and study guides for help. This is not because I don't want you to understand it, but because you're going to go to lecture and to class to get more explanation from your professor, and if you don't have time, at least you've done the reading. Now, in the beginning of law school, if you're reading long cases or cases in a subject that's slightly confusing to you, I would recommend that you look up a tiny bit of information before you start reading the case. And I don't want you to read a full synopsis of the whole case before you start reading it in your textbook. I just want you to have a clear understanding of what the issue is, who the parties are, what side the parties are on. A little bit of background information about the case can help you make a lot more sense of what you're actually reading. Sometimes the textbook will have a little note about this either right before the case or right after the case, and that could also be a place for you to look. A little background information can also tell you exactly what you're looking for, what kind of issues that you're trying to find. It will also tell you a little procedural history, such as different claims that have been dismissed, different parties that have been dismissed. It's supposed to be really short. I don't want you to spend half an hour on this. Google a case name, click on the first or second link that comes up. There are a few websites that are pretty good at this, like Case Brief and stuff like that. Just find a tiny little bit of information in 5 minutes and then go back to your reading. I always like to be 1 to 2 classes ahead on my readings. This meant that on the weekend I would read for all my classes on Monday and Tuesday, and then on Monday I would read for my class on Wednesday. I found this to be super helpful for 2 reasons. The first one was time management. By using a little bit of time over the weekend to get ahead, I didn't feel so stressed out through the rest of the week. And 2, I found that for me, reading a lot farther ahead wasn't really helpful. I know some people always try to be at least 1 week ahead in readings. I didn't really like this because by the time that class would come around, it had been a week since I read the material, so I didn't really remember it. Teaching law is hard because there's really no obvious place to start. Everything sort of connects together. By only having read 1 class in advance, you know a little more about what's going on, but you're not completely lost because you've read so far ahead that you don't remember what's going on in the lecture you're currently in. The next thing I really want to stress is that you must take good notes. I have made a whole video about taking notes and the methods I feel work the best, and I will link it in the cards up here. But what I really want you to do is to take good notes from the reading and from lecture. This will help you create your outline at the end of the semester and I will come back to the outline a little bit later, and by taking proper notes now, you will have most of the material you need. Also make sure to write down examples and to write down small things that you think aren't important but really are, like who actually ends up winning the case and precisely why. When you are in class, make sure to ask questions if you have them. If at any point you're confused, you can stop your professor and say, wait, what? I know it feels dumb and everyone else seems to get it, but if you don't get it, I guarantee you other people are not getting it. Your professor can only do so much, and they will move away from that subject area or from that specific case if no one raises an objection. This is your chance to practice being a lawyer and say, pause for a second. I'm not sure what's going on right now. If you're scared to ask questions during lecture, which is understandable, it can feel very intimidating, make sure to go to office hours or go see a teacher's assistant or ACE tutor or whatever you have for that class. 1L year is also great because you have a ton of free resources available to you. As someone who worked in the law library at my school throughout law school, I would of course suggest that you go to the library and ask the librarians first. Each law library has so many commercial outlines and resources, and the people there can really help point you in the right direction. All law schools in the United States have to take the same classes for their 1L year, so there's a ton of resources available online as well. Before I move on from the topic of reading, I want to make sure that you never fall behind. Every once in a while, things come up, things happen, you can't finish a reading, you have to keep moving. I know a lot of people who are constantly trying to catch up from readings they had fallen behind on, and they never knew what was going on in class, and they always struggled. My advice would be, if you fall behind on a reading, if you can't finish it, keep moving along. Mark it on your syllabus, make sure that you come back to it over the weekend, over a break, when you have time, but you can't let that sort of trip you over. You have to keep moving. What's difficult about law school is that life continues to happen even when you're in law school, and the volume. There's a lot of expectations on you in law school. I've made a whole video about that, but you just have to keep moving. Just keep swimming. Law school is not the time for perfection. Law school is the time for getting shit done. Law school is also a time when you have to get really comfortable with ambiguity. This freaks a lot of people out. Everyone wants a yes or no answer, a very clear and bright-lined rule, as we like to call them. There are a few of those in law school. Sure, there are some tests and elements that you can see if are met or not, but a lot of it depends. In the interest of justice, depends. You just have to accept that sometimes there is no clear answer and you have to argue both sides. That will make you a better lawyer and a better law student. If you make sure that you properly understand the material as you're going through it in lecture and on the syllabus, it will be a lot easier for you to memorize it later on. So make sure that you have a proper understanding of the material before you move on as a class, because that way you will save yourself time down the road. Now let's talk a little bit about law school exams, because those are a lot of fun. For exams, remember both the rules and the exceptions. Exceptions are very testable, so make sure you understand them properly. When you solve practice or exam problems, make sure that you are mechanical. Law can often be very emotional. Fact patterns can often include very emotional facts, and you want to react and give the plaintiff and the defendant what you think they deserve. Stop it. That's usually not the right answer. There is a little bit about common sense in the law, but that's not what we're testing. We're testing the elements. We're testing whether certain things have been met. We're testing dates for things. These are things you should remember and know and be able to call up in your head. So if you have a question asking you about battery, make sure that you go through the elements of battery in your head, see if they've all been satisfied, see what's missing, and then answer the question. This one's really hard. I often skim on it as well because I'm so sure that I will be fine without it. I know it like the back of my hand, and then I miss something super obvious, like damages need not be shown for a battery claim. I always pick the answer going, they will succeed if they show damages. It's never right. Never. When you study for exams, go through a lot of practice problems, and I mean a lot. And I want you to do them in all formats that you're being tested on. So if you have a torts exam that has multiple choice, short answer, and long essays, practice all three of those. And when you write essays, please use the CREAC or IRAC method. I prefer to use like an IRAC-CRAC method where I will do conclusion, issue, rule, application, conclusion. If you stick to this format during your exam, you're guaranteed a lot of points a lot of people miss, because you're guaranteed to hit on all the things your professor wants to see. They want to see that you know the rule, they want you to demonstrate that you can see what the issue is, they want to see that you can apply the law, and most of them want you to conclude. It doesn't really matter what your conclusion is, because as I talked about earlier, there's a lot of ambiguity and you can argue both sides, but they want to see that you can conclude, that you can balance different factors and say that the plaintiff is more or less likely to win. Also, please remember that law school exams are not the time to be creative. This is not where you want to introduce your brilliant legal theory or where you want to argue that the law should be different. This is just the time for you to demonstrate that you know the law, unless the question is specifically asking for you to come up with something. This one will probably go against the advice you hear from everyone at your law school, but I recommend that you outline later on. Most people say outline early, start your outlines early, start outlining early, for God's sake. It's a waste of your time. Every semester I try to start outlining early and I just waste time because I don't know what I'm supposed to put in my outline. If you wait until halfway or 3/4 through the semester, you have a much better understanding of what you're supposed to know, what's actually important, what's being tested, and then you can start making your outline. Making an outline can take a ton of time and be a lot of work, but remember, this is how you're supposed to study for law school finals. Making your outline and doing practice questions is how you study and revise for your final law school exams. Those two things together. This is not supposed to be a time where you read a bunch of material for everything, just for the few things that you're still confused about. So spending a lot of time in your outline is okay. My outlines always take a long time because I take my notes by hand, but I make my outline on my computer, so I have to type up all my notes. Now I say type up all my notes, I don't actually have to type up everything. I have to critically assess what's actually important and put that into my outline. Does it take time? Yes. Is it kind of chill? Yes. Is it worth it? Yes. Lastly, I just want to say, law school can be hard. Don't get discouraged. There is no secret sauce to doing well in law school. I remember being a 1L and feeling like I was missing out on something because everyone were always reading, always studying, so stressed, they didn't get it. Well, I did my reading and went to class and I felt like I was fine. It's a very high stress environment, especially for schools like mine where we rank people and where people's scholarships are dependent on their grades. It can be very competitive. Everyone's new to it. Everyone's kind of psyching each other out. It's gonna be fine. Take a deep breath, take a little break, and then get back to it. A lot of people would spend hours with their noses in different outlines and different this and different that, and it didn't help at all because they didn't do these basic things that I just talked about, like doing the reading assigned to them and going to lecture. The first half semester, hell, even year of law school can be very confusing. Everyone's in the same boat. Things are going to make more sense to you, 1, when you start taking other classes as a 2 and 3L, and 2, when you start working and actually seeing how the law is applied. Well, I'm officially all out of tea, and I am all out of tips, but I hope they help. Enjoy law school. It's an amazing journey. You will meet incredible people, you will have incredible opportunities, and you will be part of a very big, important system. Going to law school and becoming a lawyer is an incredible privilege, and it's so important and requires so much hard work, and I'm very, very proud of you for being here. Remember to use your powers for good, whatever that looks like for you. Do your reading and show up to class. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will talk to you all later. Bye!